Hey, everybody. Welcome to Police Mentors podcast, episode number 7. With you, I'm Mark Bouchard, and really excited today. I've got Matt Domyancic back. He was our guest to episode number 1, which was an awesome episode. And today he's going to be teaching us a little bit about how to prepare for a police academy. So a little bit of Matt's background, if you're not familiar with Matt. Matt was a former Division I strength coach, not only a Division I athlete as well for football, but then you were a police academy instructor, even spent some time on the SWAT team. You're now a medically retired police officer and a police chaplain. Good friend of mine. I said this in the first episode, but Matt's got 3 master's degrees, so wicked smart, knows all kinds of science. We're going to, in some ways, dive into some parts deep, but also try and keep things a little bit high level at times just to make sure that it's accessible to everybody. But Matt, welcome back on the show, brother. Well, awesome to have you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Always an honor and a privilege to get to talk to you, brother.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in. Honestly, I've had people asking questions about training for the police academy. I've tried to put a little bit of my spin. I shared how I trained, not only for the police academy, but also for the ERT course or my SWAT course. And it worked for me. At the end of the day, I won the fitness award on my course, which, I'm very proud of. But everyone's different, and there's working hard and there's working smart. And what I'm trying to do today is help people with the right information of how to work smart. And then you can still work hard, but you're going to get that much more out of it. So really what I'd love to get from you is you have people that they want to become cops and maybe they check the box in every way. They've got education and they've got the integrity and they've got all these different things down, but maybe they don't have their fitness down. So what I'd love to hear from you today, Matt, it's just a starting point for someone who's intimidated by the police academy fitness standards, who's worried about either from a strength perspective, like sometimes it's smaller people that have trouble with like a push-pull or some sort of, the physical requirement. And some people, maybe it's that they're on the heavier side, right? You're 250, 300 pounds. I had one police recruit, he was a former offensive lineman, strong as can be, but maybe cardio could be a little challenging. So I'd love to just turn it over from you. And I get that's a generic question. Like it's hard, every person's individual. But if you were to be giving someone advice on how to train physically, especially for the police academy, where would you tell them to start? What's the, the biggest wisdom you'd start with?
Well, you brought up an important point. You said a lot of different police academies. So the answer can't just be, this is how I would train to be a cop to go to the police academy, because what police agencies are you looking to apply to, or do you have your dream agency? And the first thing I would do is, whether it's the recruiting detectives or HR or whatever it is in different police departments. And a lot of times police departments don't even have their own police academy. So like say in Los Angeles or Orange County, California, the smaller departments go to the LA Sheriff's Academy. They go to the Orange County Sheriff's Academy. So where would you be going to a police academy and get the fitness standard that you're going to need to pass at the academy? Now, here in the States, I've heard that some academies don't even have fitness standards anymore, which is a whole other interesting conversation. But the first thing I would do is get the fitness standard for the academy that it's likely you want to go to or you would go to, and then take yourself out, whatever it might be. Say the old school Cooper was like 1.5 miles, certain amount of push-ups, sit-ups, sit and reach. I mean, that's an old school one, but find out what the standards are and then go see, cold turkey, can you pass it? And then if you can't pass it, that's kind of your needs assessment. And then you start working on, how do I develop workouts to pass the test for the academy that I'll have to pass? And then also find out, if you can, what type of workouts do they do? I've been through 2 police academies. I went through the Connecticut Police Academy in Meriden. It was a lot of different agencies. It was live in the barracks. And we did do Cooper Fitness, which I appreciate. Once a month, you had to pass it or you were fired, and there was no second attempts. Things have gotten much softer in the States, but also that wasn't how we trained. Every morning you have a different PT instructor you did. And if it was like a bodybuilder, he had us doing reps to failure with weight machines. And then somebody that ran marathons and triathlons would take us out until somebody was puking and falling out on a run. So there's 2 different things here if you're tracking. What are the fitness standards at the academy you're likely to go to? and you need to be able to pass that and be training for that first and foremost, so you don't have the other mental stress of, oh my God, this is going to be scary to do X, Y, and Z because I don't know if I can pass. Be training, even if it's just doing that test over and over, so you know that you can pass it once you're in the academy, and then find out what are the typical workouts. Oh, this academy has a bunch of CrossFit instructors. They're going to be crushing you with CrossFit. Okay, I need to pass whatever the PT standard is, and I need to be resilient enough to get through these CrossFit workouts without getting hurt, because that's what they're going to do every day in PT. And then I need to pass this test. So I don't know if that starts to answer the question, doing a needs assessment, and then always know that it's, as you said, train smarter, not harder. There's some really important things that we got to look at: sleep. We got to look at nutrition, because you mentioned size and weight. And again, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat with workouts, with nutrition. There's no one size fits all. And if somebody has a one size fits all workout or diet or supplement plan, like, I would run the other way. We all have different preferences and variables for the types of food we want to eat. Do you have a gym? Do you not? Do you have some dumbbells? Do you have to do body weight? Can you buy a weight vest? Can you buy a couple dumbbells and kettlebells if you're going to have to work out at home? And then we could go from there talking about workouts, but you also want to pay attention to sleep big time. And an easy way to pay attention to sleep is to get an Aura Ring. It might be an investment, but you want to pay attention to your stress levels, because you're going to have stress levels in the academy, and then you're going to have stress as a cop. So before you become a cop, how about we invest in an Aura Ring and we look at our daytime stress levels? What people, places, things, what do we put in our mouth, food and drink, and the timing of that? How does that affect our daytime stress and our REM and deep sleep? Because if you're training your butt off, I'm working out so hard for the police academy, but you're also staying up late playing video games, eating fast food, having 6 energy drinks a day, you might look at your HRV and your daytime stress and sleep, and you're not recovering. And maybe by the time you get to the academy, you're broken down. I don't know how it is in Canada, or if people from the States will be listening, but if you're still on your parents' insurance, you're young enough, and you have a down here, it'd be called a PPO, and you can get your blood work while you're healthy, or hopefully you're healthy going into a police academy. Go look at your blood sugar, look at your inflammation markers like homocysteine and CRP, look at your blood sugar, A1C, glucose, insulin. And if you're a man, look at your testosterone, your IGF-1, looks at your growth hormone, and look at your thyroids to see hopefully what you look like when you're healthy. And then, because this is preparation for, hey, I'm going to be a cop and go the distance. I want to look at your HRV, your sleep, your hormones, your blood sugar, and your inflammation now before you're a cop. And then I would want to do it again when I got out of the academy. And then I'd want to do it again sometime in my first year of service working on the street. And thereafter, once a year, kind of an annual diagnostics. This is where my hormones, my blood sugar are. Is the sleep, the shift work, the stress, the cumulative stress, the stress from the chain of command not backing me, or the trauma that I'm being exposed to creeping up on me? And I know we started out with the academy, but these are really things I'd like to bring awareness to. So 5 or 10 years down the road, I have the records of what my HRV, my sleep. There's something called EEG. It's measuring your brain waves. You can do it anywhere they do neurofeedback. Let's look at your brain waves and see how calm and focused you are now. And then maybe once a year, if you're down in the States, Wave Neuroscience is the company that I think like is really good at that. And they also have treatments called MERT. But sticking to the EEG for under $100, usually you can get your brain waves measured. Let's see how calm or overactive your brain is now, and then start paying attention to it for every year of service. And then if we adjust nutrition, sleep, our workouts to make sure that our brain, our blood work, and our HRV from like an Aura Ring are staying on track and keeping us healthy. So I threw out a whole bunch of stuff out there, but these are things that I think we should be bringing more awareness to. And when it comes to sleep, so if you're not familiar with sleep hygiene, this is a part of recovery. You want to try to stay off your technology, which is harder for all of us in this day and age and the younger generations. But if you can stay off your phone and screens, or do the red filter, Try not to eat heavy meals 2 to 3 hours before bed. You want your room to be completely black. And if you don't have your room completely black, get a cheap sleeping mask off of Amazon for the light, and you'll sleep better with cooler temperatures, like in the 60s if you can. Open the windows, or if you can have the AC. And now there's something even more recent coming out that the last hour of sleep, you're still in bed, throw an extra blanket, pull another blanket on, and warm it up. And I think that increases REM right before you wake up. And when it comes to food, again, there's 1,000 different ways to skin a cat. And perfect can be the enemy of consistency and doing the basics. So you don't need the perfect workout. You don't need the right gym. You don't need the perfect diet. What can I do today that is better than what I did yesterday? And so it might be I drank 4 Coca-Colas a day and 5 Red Bulls. Well, I'm going to go down to 3 Coca-Colas a day and 4 Red Bulls. And then I'm going to systematically try to lower the amount of caffeine or chemicals. Start looking anything you can't pronounce on your food labels and in your drinks, probably not good for you. Liquid sugars, the worst thing for us. Basic nutrition, perimeter of the grocery store, which is meat, egg, fish, fruits, vegetables, nuts. Like, try to stay away from processed food. But yeah, clean up the things that are not good for you. And don't try to say, hey, tomorrow I'm going to start vegan, paleo, Mediterranean, carnivore, primal, ancestral, this, that. There's a lot of different things out there. Just, hey, what can I do today that's more movement than I had yesterday? What can I do today that's cutting back on maybe some of the junk food or junk drinks? What can I do that has a little more protein or healthy fat? And pay attention to your sleep, because sleep is crucial for recovery, for mood, for cognitive function.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. I mean, you nailed so many good points. At the end there, you're basically saying like the basics of nutrition. And I'm going to use an analogy, but say firearms. Like, you want to be a great shooter, you know what you need to do? You need to be really good at firearms fundamentals. Like, I'll give you an example, but when I take my wife out to the range, she wants to do all these ninja rolls and fancy things and shooting prone. And I'm like, no, we just need to get really good at the basics. Let's just get good at shooting little dots and hitting them really accurately and then doing it faster. And then we'll build from there. And I think there's such a comparison, whether it's nutrition, whether it's strength, cardio, all the other aspects, is like, often we want some sort of like, well, just give me the magic pill that'll fix it all. And the answer is actually just really focusing on the basics, like something like sleep that 20 years ago, I didn't know how much that mattered. And I really wish I had back in my athletic days. I would work out really hard and then go get drunk and stay up all night. And I had no clue that I could have been so much better. And I really wish I'd known. So I think you've got so much good wisdom in that. There's a couple other things you said that I really want to touch on. Early on, you talked about knowing the standard. That's huge. What are you going to be tested on? Because different places will be different. How much running do they do? How much strength is there? And at the end of the day, you got to adapt to what you want. If you want to be in a certain program, a certain agency, and you know they do the 1.5 mile run, that's your answer. That's telling you what to focus on. So this goes back to that everyone doesn't necessarily all need the same things. And that's what I did. When I first heard about our emergency response team tryout coming up, I heard you needed an 11-minute Coopers. And I said, oh, I'm not even sure I could do that. And the other one was the pull-ups. I can't remember whether it was 4 or 6 pull-ups or something like that. And I didn't know if I could do that. And that's embarrassing now to say, because I got up to doing like 20-something pull-ups. But that took me years of working to hit that point. So when I first did that 1.5 miles, I got just under 11. I think I was like a 10:45. And by the time the tryout came on, I think I got a 9:38. So it really shows you that was within like a couple months of how much improvement you can make if you're training smart. And I think I got up to 8 pull-ups at that point. And then again, over years, I really increased my pull-ups by, again, training smart. So it really does show if you can understand what's coming. I think you used the term needs assessment, but it's so crucial. And then the other thing is, my challenge to anybody listening is focus on your weakness. If you can bench press 400 or 500 pounds, guess what you love doing? You go to the gym every day and you want to do bench press, and you might still fail out of your police academy or your emergency response SWAT team tryouts, and you're just the strongest person in the world, but you can't do the other things you need to do. And so often we don't want to do what we're not good at, but we have to have the discipline and even, to shift back to like a SWAT level tryout or emergency response team tryout. I'll often say to people, like, go get in the pool, go rucksack march, go do all these things. Like, you think it's all about running and shooting guns, and it isn't. And you're going to fail out because you haven't done the other things that take more discipline to do, because it's fun to just go to the range and shoot. It's easy to just throw on your running shoes and run out the door. It takes a lot more thought and discipline to go and do those other things. But that cross training also really helps. So it's actually, I think you really hit on some good points. And the last thing I'll say before I pass it back over to you is the blood work. I wish someone had told me that. I wish we'd done that when I got hired, because when I ended up off work on stress leave, eventually I did my blood work and it was a train wreck. And I wish I'd known what my normal and my baseline was, especially because when you look in the mirror, you can't see it. So you don't feel right. You feel all messed up, but yet you look at yourself and you look the exact same and you can't understand it. But when we look down at that chemical, molecular level, whatever the right term is, we do see what's happening. And I think it almost gives us permission to be human, to understand that if I was walking around with a broken leg, everyone could see it and I'd have permission that I'm injured right now. Whereas recognizing those changes internally is also so crucial. So what I would love to ask you, Matt, if you're willing, is to even almost dive into kind of a couple different categories. We gave some overview, right? The nutrition and the fitness and all that's going to be, and sleep is all consistent. If you want to be at your peak performance, then those things will help anybody. But I'd love to dive into almost like two main categories. One being your advice for strength. Like if you're a small person or somewhat of a weak person and you need more strength, what's kind of, where would you guide them to go towards? And then the other one being a little bit more cardio. If say somebody was an offensive lineman and they'd make a great cop, but they just can't pass that 1.5 miles yet. So I don't know which one of those two you want to jump on first, but if you want to maybe take one of those and nerd out and just kind of give them a bit of the science of how to get the best bang for their buck. If they're willing to put in the effort, how to make sure that they're putting the effort into the right things for those two categories. So which one would you like to jump into first?
I mean, I'll start with strength since you brought it up. And again, I'm not the guru on this, even though I have a ton of experience working out for 37 years myself and being a strength coach. I am not up on, say, the Dr. Andy Galpins of the world, and other D1 strength coaches are so much more advanced than me. And also, I want to also say, for each person, this is going to look different, because I don't know, are you starting at ground zero, or are you the offensive lineman that played high school and college football? So let's say you have 8 years of lifting under your belt and you have access to a gym, or people do or don't have access to a gym. So generally speaking, if you're trying to work on strength and broad strokes, if you do have a barbell, like if you have a gym, I would start with the basic compound movements, only if you have good technique and you're not going to hurt yourself, or somebody can, train you on the basic bench row. So like a horizontal push pull, overhead press, and a chin up or a pull up. So that's a vertical push pull. And then back squats or box squats. Trap bar deadlift. If you struggle with technique, the trap bar deadlift can hit some of the, a lot of the same muscles. Romanian deadlift, RDL. And then if you know how, or you have a good coach, I'm a massive fan of Olympic lifts. So either a power clean or a hang clean, a snatch or a hang snatch. And I think that I know the compound movement's going to help you build more strength. Sticking to compound movements, push pull. And let's say if you're somebody that can only lift 3 days a week, then maybe make it a full body. You're going to hit upper and lower body 3 days a week. If you have 4 days a week, then maybe it's 2 upper body, 2 lower body. And if you want some generic templates, and again, there's a lot of different ways to work out, maybe look up the conjugate method with Westside. Now that might get fancy because there could be bands and chains, but there's a max effort day. And that means you might be lifting heavier weights for lower reps with more rest in between sets. And then there'll be, say, an upper body day, and then there'll be another upper body day dynamic effort where you're looking at bar speed versus just pushing heavier weights. And then you'll have a same thing with lower body. But again, there's a million ways to skin a cat. Those are the things I would do for strength if I could. And then I would throw in, if you have kettlebells or dumbbells, general physical preparation, GPP, and or you can afford a weight vest. So maybe you can get some used kettlebells or dumbbells. And on Amazon now, they have a lot of different weight vests that I think that it's made them cheaper. I don't know how big you are. So like 15, 20, 30, 40 pound. I have a 65-pound one and it's miserable. It like hurts your shoulders, but GPP, general physical preparation. So this might be diving a little bit into cardio, but also with the weight work in between sets, do farmer's carries. If you have a little bit of time, go for a weight vest walk. They're actually kind of like low energy, like you do not have to bust your ass and drain your battery, but they will have a tremendous benefit over time. Just farmer's carries and vest walks can complement the lifting. And for those of you, if we're going really basics, if you have the option between barbells and dumbbells or machines, as long as you can do it safely, please try to do barbells and dumbbells because there's going to be proprioception and balance and stabilizer muscles and activating your core, and anything you can do standing up, do it standing up because that's going to make your whole body work more than doing, say, even a seated dumbbell overhead press. Just stand up and do it so you're activating more of the entire body. It's just little things that a lot of people already know, but if they don't know, Mark, I'm kind of just throwing some different things out there.
Great. And I'm going to jump in, almost interrupt you for a sec, if you don't mind, because I didn't even know that. Like, I would not have chosen to do standing, overhead press or any of that kind of stuff. I would have done it seated typically. So that's really good. Let me maybe add one thought. I think you know way more about this stuff than I do, but I'm going to say one thing that really helped me. And it was a concept I heard from Pavel Tsatsouline called greasing the groove. I don't know what your experience been with that or what you've seen with other people, but I think that's where I got a lot of my pull-up ability. Was over a course of years, I would just go do, and I'll explain it to anyone who's not familiar with it, and my understanding, and then you please correct me if I'm wrong about any of it. But you're basically trying to do about 50% of your max to maybe 80%. So let's say my max was 10 pull-ups at the time. I'd be doing something like 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 pull-ups. And I would be doing it every like 15 or 20 minutes. So during my workout, much like you said, doing farmer carries in between, let's say I'm doing leg day, I just go over and do 5 pull-ups, 6 pull-ups, something like that. And it's training through volume, it's training through efficiency. And that got me up, like I used to struggle to do almost any pull-ups. And that got me up to doing 20 some odd pull-ups, which was a big deal for me. That's a lot. That was a lot for me. I guess, what's your experience been with greasing the groove? Have you found it effective personally or with other people? What's your take on it?
That's just scientific. And Pavel is like a great guy. So that's a great resource. Look up Pavel Tsatsouline. What is it? Strong First? Man, I should have. Anyways, look up Pavel Tsatsouline. He's got a bunch of free articles. He has books that are, go back 30 years, but it's around deadlift. Do a lot of deadlift. Do a lot of kettlebell swings. And there's another guy that Pavel actually got me his email in recent years, a sports psychologist, Dr. Judd Biazzato. He's got some kind of terminal illness things going on, but he's a legendary sports psychologist that was both a champion bodybuilder and a champion powerlifter. And I remember one of his stories in Powerlifting USA going back to 8th grade, and I'm 50 years old, where he put a bench in his kitchen. And every time he went in the kitchen, he had to do like 1 or 2 reps with the 315 bench. So there is some kind of neurological thing about greasing the groove, getting repetitions around a movement. And that's also why when you first start lifting or the first time somebody teaches you the agility ladder, you feel clumsy, you feel weird. The first time, heck, I can't even shoot good with the red dot yet, Mark. Like people, like it's a new technique. I'm like, oh my God, I feel clumsy. Just give me the iron sights. You're greasing the groove. So later on you can have unconscious competence where it's an automatic motor skill that you're no longer thinking of it. I got a lot of weight on the bar now, and I'm not worried about it. How is this going to feel? Like I'm going to lock it in and focus on tightening my body and my breathing and kind of let go and surrender and hopefully be in the zone or a flow state. That only comes from repetition, 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 repetition. So I guess a good analogy is you want to be good at martial arts or defensive tactics or arrest and control. You're going to have to train a lot more than you're going to get in any police academy I'm aware of. If you want to be under stress when you get punched in the face and thinking about Tony Blauer, spontaneous protection, enabling accelerated response, what happens in a sudden violent encounter, you're going to have to grease the groove with your martial arts skills to be able to pull it off where it looks legit and you're not like spazzing out and fearing for your life. You want to get really good with shooting. You're going to have to grease the groove probably more than you're getting in the academy to drill down the basic marksmanship skills. But then how about I just got in a car chase, I popped out, it's dark, the lights are on, foot chase, and now somebody's got a weapon. That's totally different. And if you've not got enough reps, it's not going to happen automatically, and then you're not going to be able to make good decisions. We're jumping all over the place, and I apologize if that doesn't make sense because you're not worried about making.
Don't apologize.
Okay.
No, it's fantastic information. And I mean, even just a few of the names you've mentioned here and some of the insights, like what a depth of wisdom so many of them have. And your comparison with firearms is important. I just went on a firearms instructor course, and I actually found, because I got a lot of shooting background, I have to consciously choose to demo slowly and do everything formally properly to show it, because my default is now to do it quite quickly. And I don't know, you guys use the terms workspace. I'm guessing you do. It just means like doing your manipulations up high in front of your face. But having done so much of them, I'm basically doing them out more like a threat ready. So the gun's basically still on target. You're just doing everything right away and you're not consciously really thinking about it. Whereas when I demo for a new user type level, truly they're not at that level right now. So we're just trying to get them to safely come up and do it in a safe way. So I really see that comparison of just elements of physical training. If you just start doing the most advanced things and you don't have good form and you don't understand, I see it with CrossFit sometimes. And there's lots of good about CrossFit, but if you just start jumping into deadlifts that are too heavy for you and you have bad form and you're doing it at the end of your WOD, you're probably going to get hurt. So there's good there, but maybe just, you don't necessarily have to beat everybody around you. The goal is to be stronger tomorrow or next week. It's not to show off that you deadlifted a new PR today. If you do, great, but make sure you're doing it in a way you're not getting hurt. Because that's what I have seen is a lot buddies getting injured with that competitiveness instead of just, okay, have the humility to maybe take a little weight off or just focus on technique and long-term building, not always just pushing yourself to the extremes where you get injured.
A number of things. Wow. Just in case people aren't familiar, since you did bring up CrossFit, I would not do anything that's plyometric in nature, including a box jump or a snatch or a clean, more than 5 reps. Maybe you can do a box jump for 8, 10, at the most, but don't do anything explosive as conditioning. And that's a CrossFit thing. Or if something's hard, this whole doing hard things. So a lot of people are on the internet showing their workouts, doing hard things. Olympic lifts, the snatch, the clean as example, and plyometrics are not meant to do at high reps. Also, when you're doing anything, firearms, martial arts, learning how to lift, it really is competing with yourself. This is not about external validation. It's competing with yourself. Again, what am I doing today to make myself better compared to who I was, the version of myself yesterday? Live from the inside out, not the outside in. And the more you train, the more you have that confidence, the more you have that when you're working towards conscious competence, then unconscious competence, then you don't care about what other people think. And we do live in a world of external validation. This even ties into, for recovery and for your HRV and even for your mental health, cold plunge, sauna are healthy things to work on your parasympathetic nervous system. But if your whole goal with a cold plunge or a sauna is to show yourself with your shirt off and how tough you are that you did the sauna for 40 minutes at 220 degrees and you did the cold plunge at 40 degrees for 6 minutes. And then you tell everybody on the Instagram to beat me, suck it up, I'm tough. You completely defeated the purpose of training the parasympathetic nervous system. You made it external validation. You made it about ego. And to be honest, like LinkedIn has kind of turned into social media as well lately. A lot of wellness ex-cops, wellness-based mental health professionals are doing selfies, tons of selfies. What am I eating? What am I drinking? How am I working out? And I'm cold plunging and I'm doing sauna. And actually someone posted up like, what are tactical athletes addicted to? And people are like energy drinks and this and that. And I said external validation, addicted to external.
Attention.
Yeah, attention. And that
Yeah.
includes cold plunge, sauna. Let me show you my strict meal. Let me show you, anything that I'm doing. Now the focus is off me competing with myself. And maybe this is a little sports psych, and maybe this is just a little bit of psychology and quote spirituality in general, like looking at your values and self-reflecting on how you're living your life versus comparing yourself to other people. So yeah, compete with yourself and train smarter, not always harder. But then I'm like, there are people in the younger generations, or in general, there's some people that are not thoroughbreds and don't know how to push it. So do you know, are you a thoroughbred that's an ex-athlete that pushes it too hard? Are you the ex-Green Beret SEAL, SAS, or whatever the Canadian Special Forces are, that you burn the candle at both ends and you don't know how to take your foot off the gas? Or are you somebody that doesn't know how to push it? So maybe you do need an appropriate CrossFit class or a jiu-jitsu class where they push you harder than you're comfortable. So you got to know where you are in all of that. But there are a lot of alpha males and ex-athletes that train too hard, or people just get into training and they're pushing it too hard and they're not paying attention to sleep, self-regulation, which is manage your own stress, which would be paying attention with your blood work, your EEG, and your HRV with your Aura ring. Focus on yourself. And then by the time you get to the academy or you're trying out for SWAT or ERT or whatever the tactical team is called, and your country and your agency, you're going to have confidence and be more focused because you're not worried about other people. You're living from the inside out, not the outside in. And you can do that when you are good at preparation and you take the basics with the working out, with the sleep, with the recovery, basics done with consistency, discipline, and passion, trump the perfect workout, the perfect diet, the perfect supplement plan, the perfect TRT plan, the perfect psychedelic plan to cure your trauma, whatever it is they're selling out there. There's nothing that's perfect and one size fits all. You worry about yourself, finding the basics that you need to improve upon and jumping back. Yeah, like we often will. And I've done this. I could share training my whole life. I hate running. So even though when football camp was coming, I trained hard in the gym and didn't start running in high school till like 2 weeks before, sometimes in college as well. Boot camp's coming for military school. I lift a lot. SWAT's coming. I don't want to do the cardio for SWAT because I'm good at lifting. So we got to force ourselves to do the things that we're not good at, Again, so many different topics we could chat about. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll echo what you're saying there, Matt. I love the thought process of consistency over perfection because like my wife and I have talked about this. And so often it's like, well, but my workout plan's an hour or an hour and a half and I don't have time, so I'm not going to do it. And I'm a little more the other way where I'm like, okay, I only got 30 minutes. And I'll send you a picture after this, actually. I was introducing Matt to my youngest son here just before we started recording. And I took a picture this morning where I was pushing him on a sled because I had to parent and work out, and those were going to happen at the same time. So I asked him, we threw some lacrosse ball back and forth, and I said, you want to hop on this and get a ride? And then I just started dragging him up and down the street on the sled, and he didn't even want to get off. And it wasn't a great workout. My workout was a 2 or 3 out of 10. And I maybe wasn't the perfect parenting either, but at least I got to do a little bit of both. We had some fun, and you find a way. And Matt, you would know this, but I went to my cabin there for several weeks this summer, and I didn't have a gym. You know what I did? I filled up buckets of water, and I walked them up a big hill. and then I would race my kids up the hill back to the parenting and working out. I'd run backwards to try and get some of the quad workouts, and I would just take turns racing one of them up and then the next one up. And it's far from perfect. I'm sure there were much better ways of doing it, but it was good enough. It was something. Like at the end of the day, consistency over perfection. That's what I remind myself, is just get out there and do something. And the one other thing I'd love to add, I wish I'd got to know you more when I was younger, because I was that guy that did so much overtraining. When you were talking about box jumps and only doing 5 or 8 or 10, and I'm like, no, man, I would be doing sprints on the treadmill and then tons of burpees and box jumps and all kinds of stuff. And then I'd do it all over again. And I probably did some damage to my body. And even at one point we did this lunge walking workout where we just go to like a football field and we would just lunge all the way across and back and do it like 6 times. So at some point I added it up. I would think we were doing like over 500 lunges in a row, like basically not stopping. And I look back in hindsight, I would not encourage anyone to do that. I don't think that's a good plan. We did eventually start doing less, but with some weight. So then you'd like throw on a vest and carry some weight and whatever, maybe do 4 lengths. Again, probably still too much and not the greatest plan, but I'd be sore for a week. Like I couldn't sit right, you know? So I wish I'd trained smarter, not just trained harder. Yeah. And that consistency over perfection, I want to leave that with anybody. I give you permission to just find a way to get something done. Make sure you're not hurting yourself, but as long as you're doing what you can and accepting that it's not going to be perfect, and that's totally okay. But I would love to pivot for us from the strength side to the cardio side, because there are different things on the cardio side that people can do. And that's a whole other area that people need. Hey, it's probably something I need right now. You know, my cardio isn't what it once was. And it's something I'm trying to work on myself. So, I'd love to throw it over to you. What are some thoughts you have for cardio? If that's what they need right now, what are some of your starting points for them?
This is where I am definitely not the expert, because this is something that I've never enjoyed. And there's people out there that talk about the different zones and paying attention to your heart rate. And I'm not one of those guys. I think it's Joel Jameson. And I forget what his program's called, but Joel Jameson is like cardio guru for elite athletes. If people want names, Dr. Andy Galpin, I would look at Dr. Andy Galpin. For me, over the years as an athlete, and again, I'm just throwing out broad generic things, because I hate steady state and distance work. Like I always, even training for SWAT school, knowing that it was going to be a lot of distance work, I had a 40-pound vest and I did lots of walking and running. Now, I wouldn't advise running with 40 at an older age, and I don't even know if somebody's younger. That's a lot of banging. But vest walks, loaded carries like the farmer's walks, interval training, whether that's sprint interval training. I'm not doing it now. I should be, and they say even older people should, but different sprint intervals. And then whether you have a rower, Versa climber, I love, and they're super expensive. But if you have a Versa climber, intervals and steady state on Versa climber, assault bike, rower, setting up sandbag things, flipping tires, sledgehammer, that can be fun, more like strongman type circuits to get your heart rate up. Yeah, I'm not the expert on cardio, but I would for sure, if you have a 1.5 mile run, or you hear that you're going to run a mile a day, 3 days a week in the academy, you better just at the minimum be doing whatever that test is. And going back, I do remember, like for high school and college football, if it was 116 110s, which is so irrelevant in football, but that was a test. There's the beep test for some sports. Whatever the conditioning test is, just make sure you can do that for sure. And you're doing enough volume without hurting yourself. So you're doing enough consistency with the steady state or whatever it might be, so you can hang in the academy. But I do believe, and I know at least for myself, I could do more interval training, the more strongman, like sledgehammer, tire, whipping med balls, circuit type training, carries. You brought up sleds. Sleds and carries are things you can do on upper and lower body days. You can do that stuff like every day. And again, going back to West Side Barbell, the conjugate method, those dudes do lots of sled work and carries, and doing the intervals either on a track, in the grass, preferably not on pavement. Just for FYI, for people that aren't familiar, running on pavement is pretty hard on your body. And whatever machines you have to do intervals. So you can do sprint intervals, and you can do assault bike, rower, Versa climber, things like the elliptical and a regular treadmill. If you have a Woodway or some of the other treadmills where you actually have to propel it yourself, not the generic treadmills that are moving underneath you. Yeah, those are things that I just prefer. And I can't speak to a lot of the science of the cardio because I've never been that guy.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Lots of good information there. Tons of good information. I'll share a little bit about my experience training specifically on the cardio side. When I went to train for the emergency response team, I was about 215 pounds when I started, and 6 months later, I got down to 185. My cardio got a lot better. So as I said, my mile and a half time went from a 10:45 to a 9:38 on race day, about 2 months later, maybe just under. And I got it down to about a 9:08. I think that was about my best time, maybe a year or two after that, or a little while, a little while later. And truly, I thought of just, it was a lot of interval training for me. It was a lot of like sprints. So I would mix up my sprints on the low end, maybe 30 seconds. On the high end, could be as long as 2 minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, the odd time, and anything in between. I would use a treadmill so that I could adjust my pace, because then I could know I'm running at 9.1. And guess what? Next week I'm running at 9.2. Or I'm running it at a 3% incline, and tomorrow I'm going at a 3.1. And again, not always up, but it's almost like up, 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 down, down, up, 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 down, down, or whatever. You're doing some versions of that based on how much you've recovered, all that. I also looked at if I could train at a high intensity, but for a shorter time frame, then I could train more often. So if I only did 20 or 30 minute, but I kept it pretty intense, it meant I could train again tomorrow, versus if I did this for 2 hours, well, my body's too beat up. I can't do it. So that's a little bit of how I tried to think. Also adding in the cross training, like sometimes it's as simple as just grabbing a kettlebell in one hand and walking at an incline. I still do that workout like fairly regularly. That's my kind of zone 2. I can do that and get my heart rate into the 120 something to 140 something, which is like that kind of, you're having a little bit of trouble having like a good conversation, if that makes sense, like that little bit of trouble talking while you're working out. And then just trying a bunch of different things. Like at my gym now at work, they have some sort of climbing ladder. I think what you described as a Versa climber, I'm guessing, is that the one you grab up high and you pull down? Is that what it is?
Leg. And
okay.
And if you have Jacob's ladder, that I had that in the police academy too. When I created the police academy gym, it was logs, kegs, obviously Olympic lifting, bumper plates before that was cool, Jacob's ladder, Versa climber, and doing speed work. That's how I trained police recruits, cadets, and in service. And I mean, I cut you off, but Jacob's ladder is awesome. One thing I forgot, listen, if you're going to be a cop, or you already are a cop, but definitely if we're talking about prepping for the academy, if you have a boxing gym near you, judo, jujitsu, MMA, Muay Thai, Krav Maga, any of those are going to allow you to learn to deal with fatigue, with being close physically with another human and getting hit, even if you're hitting pads instead of the first time you get punched is in a scenario at the academy, or worse yet, on the street. And here's the thing, if you can make it through a judo, jujitsu, MMA, Muay Thai, a boxing class where, jump rope and focus mitt and sparring, listen, if that's interval training, that's psychological preparation for close to close violence. And if you can get through those things, you can gut out a 3-mile run. I mean, I'm convinced of that. So sprint interval, the Jacob's ladder, Versa climber, assault bike, rower. Rower is not as much. I mean, it'd be good, but you're not using your wheels as much. Or doing some type of combative hand-to-hand thing where you're doing interval training. You can gut out the long runs at an academy or a SWAT school. That's my thinking. It's not scientific, but you can do it.
Well, and I'll say, like, I've been in lots of hockey fights, and it's tiring, man. I mean, I've done jujitsu and I've done some different use of force type stuff, but when you start talking like legitimately wrestling another human being or knowing that the stakes are real, they can actually break your nose or knock your teeth out or any of those things, the level of exhaustion that you can hit, or they can choke you out. Or if we start talking real policing, like they could kill you. It is it's no joke. And I don't mean to be overly dramatic about it. Um, but that level of exhaustion, like after you get in a hockey fight and it's a long fight, like you're wiped. I've jokingly heard it's like you get a 5-minute penalty just so you can recover, just so you could sit in the box for 5 minutes because you're so wrecked. And the same for like jujitsu and stuff like that. It is when you're dealing with that kind of stuff of moving another human body and knowing that there's consequence. Like if you don't keep up, you could get really hurt. I agree with you. That is actually a great way to train because I think as over time, my thought on training has gone more towards functional fitness. I don't actually really care anymore about PRs and all this. Like, I don't care. I don't even lift that heavy anymore. I mostly just try to stay healthy, move. But I really don't stress anymore. Like, when I was in my 20s or maybe 30s, it was very much like, okay, cool. I need to lift heavier. I need to look good or whatever the reason was. Whereas now my thought process has really changed towards being healthy. And what you were saying of like running on pavement and somehow it can be hard on your body, I would encourage people to think about that ahead of time. Because now I have like osteoarthritis in my knee, I have it in my back, I have a bunch of problems, probably from doing what you were saying earlier not to do, from doing the way too many box jumps and doing all those things. Like, and I have buddies now that are in their 20s and 30s trying to follow in some of my career path and do like emergency response or SWAT team work. Um, and I try and teach them how to be healthier, how to look up mobility and sleep and nutrition and all the things I didn't, avoid alcohol, so that they don't need to be. I'm 42 and my body's pretty beat up. And I wish I'd been smarter about it. I wish I had someone like you to teach me more of this when I was younger. So I think this is a really good foundation for anybody. Like if you don't have a big background, and I know some of the people listen to this, they're, coming out of high school, they're in their 20s, they're trying to get into law enforcement. And if you don't have that big sports background like you and I did, it was easier for me to transition when it was like, okay, here's the tryout and it's actually a decently physical thing. And I'm like, I've done hard physical workouts. I'm not that worried about it. You know how to push yourself and you have enough of a base to fall back on. But not everyone had that. Not everyone had great coaches and great mentors showing them that. So I think you've given a lot of insights and a lot of other resources to follow up. Like it's not like this is the end. You can go and look up all these different things. Andy Galpin to Pavel Satsulin to Westside Barbell. Like you could dive into those things for hundreds of hours alone. Let alone you don't. It's not just this. But I think we really have given them a good base. Do you have any as we kind of start winding down? Do you have any like kind of closing thoughts or final advice for someone where if they're thinking, okay, I'm getting ready for the police academy, is there anything else you'd want to share with them?
Maybe write a letter to yourself, a self-reflective letter to yourself, like, who am I? What are the most important values in my life? Looking at my life now, am I living out those values? Why is it that I want to be a police officer? And what are the intrinsic reasons that I want to be a police officer? And where do I see myself in a year or two? And just kind of do like a self-exploratory paper of who I am and these are my values and how much do I think I'm living them out right now? So in addition to pie in the sky, you do your blood work on hormones, blood sugar, inflammation markers, DEXA scan, body fat, EEG, looking at your brain waves. Maybe you do a sleep study, you have the Oura ring to look at your HRV, what it is now before a cop. Who was I or who am I now before I'm a cop? Before I get in a culture that can be pretty shitty at times, and or I'm going to be exposed to the suffering of innocent human beings. I may be exposed to leadership that does not back me up. I may be living in a culture where I use force that I don't even have sufficient training, and then I may get charged with a crime or just for political reasons benched and on investigation for a year or two, until the media stuff blows over. And then I feel like I'm betrayed by my bosses. Like, we want to know who we are before we start dealing with all that stuff. And we want to check in with that, however that might be over time.
Love it, Matt. At the end of the day, I mean, I think we've given them a good base of like that strength side, the cardio side. And I think that is the other key side is the mental side, you know, because to push through when things get hard, you need to know your why. Why are you doing this? And not just hard in the moment. Like when the fight is on, everybody actually wants to win the fight. But the question is, did you prepare enough that you actually can win a fight when you may not have started it? You may not have picked it. You didn't choose it was at 3 in the morning, but are you actually ready? You know, have you done, and the why, I'll speak to this too. When I was doing those sprints, when I was training to get ready for an emergency response team tryout, you know what I was picturing? We had a window in front of us, and I would look out the window and picture my buddy is around that corner and he's in a fight and he needs my help. And that was the kind of stuff that I would be training. This is my kind of why. I want to help people. I want to keep people safe. And that's the thing, as your body is shutting down and you're hitting those really hard points, that why will keep you going, both in training for it, but then also help you to be that much more ready in the reality. And I also love what you said about knowing your values. Like, to me, it is a part of your identity. It's not the only part. There needs to be so many other parts to who you are. Like, you are not just a cop. You are so many other things. And I personally try and live that where, hey, I took today off so I could do this kind of stuff, so I could spend time with my kid, even though I could go to work and, you know, be doing fun stuff at work too. But it is important to have that balance as a person. So I love that. I think you really role model that in terms of a lot of healthy masculinity and identity and thoughtfulness, you know, and thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So before we end, Matt, I would love to turn it back over to you just to speak a little bit about what kind of stuff you're up to, any final thoughts you want to share, any ways that you want people to connect with you. And I'd love to just open it over to you. So pass it back to you, buddy.
At this point in time, I hold a lot of space for a lot of special operations, cops and firefighters. I facilitate outdoor recreation retreats. I also kind of do chaplain and peer support at surf therapy events or surf therapy retreats. And I also help with Jiu-Jitsu peer support. It's a kind of a course I developed 20 years ago, and anybody that wants to sponsor these or bring me on board to hold retreats or Jiu-Jitsu peer support, that's more tactical shooting, more martial arts, plus some cold plunge, sauna, breath work. And then I talk about mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health and well-being. You can find me, Matt Domyancic, on LinkedIn, the website, tacticalchaplain.com, Instagram at Thin Blue Line Spirituality, Thin Blue Line Spirituality, and the Tactical Chaplain. And I just want to say quickly, like if somebody is like, I don't even, man, we threw out too much information. If you can afford a weight vest, get a weight vest. If you can afford, and I'm not even a kettlebell guy, but get a pair of kettlebells and get a jump rope. You can do vest walks. You can do farmer's carry. With the kettlebells, you can do farmer's carry, overhead press, bent over row, goblet squat, kettlebell swing, and RDL. There's your full body. And jump rope. And the jump rope and the weight vest, you don't need a gym, and you could be, quote, doing your cardio and your general physical preparation. So that just crossed my mind as, oh my God, I have no idea what to do. And then the thing for the harder cardio, whatever judo, jujitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, combat sport you might have near you that you can afford and works with your schedule, 2 to 3 days a week, get after that. You could do the kettlebell, the vest, and the jump rope at home 2 to 3 days a week of a combative art, and you would be super confident going into the academy.
Couldn't agree with you more, Matt. It's more about just doing something. You don't necessarily need all the fanciest pieces of equipment. And pretty much all those things you said, from the kettlebells to the weighted vest to the jump rope, I have all those in my gym. I use them pretty regularly. And sometimes it's as simple as I don't have anything, you know, run up a hill. It's grab a bucket of water, like the story I told. It's just find a way to use the same kind of concepts. You know, it's calisthenics, it's burpees, it's any of these kind of things. So once again, Matt, thank you for coming on, man. I got so much respect for you, the wisdom you bring. I know you said in there a couple times that you're not an expert to the level of some other people, but you are the expert, Matt. Like, you know more than 99.9999% of people on these kind of topics. You know, you've studied it like crazy, and I really appreciate you coming on to just share it openly with people. I know I have friends and cops that I know who've connected with you and who have had an awesome experience just reaching out to you. So for anybody out there that's considering reaching out to Matt, he's an awesome resource and a great support, and he's doing awesome work. So with that, I will let you run in the interest of time, Matt. Stay online. We'll chat a little bit offline, but thank you once again, and I look forward to having you back on. Thanks a lot.